there. Welcome back to this week's episode. Today we are going to be talking about assimilation. Is assimilation the goal? Is it your goal? Do you feel like it's society's goal? We're going to be talking about why this topic came up for me, the historical context behind, when groups have tried to assimilate into the culture and when they have not, and what do the consequences look like, what it looks like today, and what that means for you. And we're going to get into a little bit of tips for later. So thank you for being here. We're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into the video. This video could be for anyone of any race. I will be going into what it's looked like for Black people who have not tried to assimilate into the culture. But essentially, when you're thinking about this question for yourself, this could really be applied to anyone of any ethnicity, because obviously we know that whiteness is the dominant culture. So is your goal to assimilate? Okay, so I was recently in this class, and my class is about the Black Atlantic and imperialism and political economy. And we were talking about the protests that happened back in the day at Howard. And someone in my class was just nowadays everyone just wants a seat at the table. Nowadays everyone is just into assimilating. But I wish times were I wish it was back in the day when, if you didn't like something, you really fought for it, or not everyone wants to assimilate. And I was just kind of is everyone's goal today to assimilate? I don't know. So I want y'all to comment below, but just in general, that just really got me thinking, because I'm I don't want to assimilate. That's not my goal. And I feel like I feel like there's a lot of people who I wouldn't say that was their goal, to assimilate into the culture and just to kind of I don't know. So I decided to do a video about it. So yes. So assimilation. What is assimilation? So the Google definition, I'm going to read it verbatim. So cultural assimilation is the process in which a minority group or culture comes to resemble a dominant group or assume the values, behaviors, and beliefs of said group. So when looking at assimilation, if we're really going to just break that down, it's, whatever the dominant culture is, you kind of putting whatever your beliefs, your behaviors, and your cultural norms, kind of putting that to the side, suppressing them, and just adopting what the dominant culture's cultural beliefs or systems or behaviors are. So a lot of times we can see this acted out in schools, everywhere really, but just for some reason that was the first example I was thinking of. If you've ever experienced something where it's you brought some kind of lunch to school and it's ethnic, or just something that's not I don't know, American food, which is fries and a burger, or just something that's not really recognizable, and being made fun of it in school and being what's that smell? And this could be obviously something that plays into the job market. It can play into academics. It can play into really any facet of life. So before I get into it, I just want to preface that I'm going to be briefly going into the historical context. At some point, I probably will do a more, a full video about maybe the different things I talk about. But for the purpose of this video, just because I want to kind of bring it up and to make sure this video isn't super long, I'm just going to kind of touch on these topics. But if you want me to, I can definitely do videos where I go into it more. And I probably will do that at some point. So in 1896, we have Plessy versus Ferguson. So Plessy versus Ferguson was a landmark U.S. court case that basically decided or put into place that the conditions for Black and white folks would be separate but equal. So whenever you hear about Plessy versus Ferguson, you can just think separate but equal. So this is kind of what started the Jim Crow era. The white folks in power or whatever being okay, so slavery's over, but we still need ways to keep Black people at the bottom and keep white people up here. So we're gonna have a bunch of laws and stuff that is going to say that Black people can't vote, that I talked about in my last video, but that, you know, interracial couples cannot get married. So basically keeping black and white people separate and keeping black people at the bottom. So Plessy versus Ferguson kind of is what started the Jim Crow era. So this is interesting, and this is good to, this is what I wanted to talk about in the video, just because this is kind of what started the idea of, you know, should we assimilate? Should we not? You know, is integration the goal? Is integration the key? I probably will do a video about that because I think that's something that's interesting too. Obviously for white people right after, it was, you know, no integration. Y'all stay over there. We're going to stay over here. We're going to give y'all bad conditions. Good luck. And black people still made a way. What? You know? So going along with that, in the beginning of the 20th century, black folks were like, okay. Black folks in Tulsa, Oklahoma were like, cool, y'all stay over there, we gonna stay over here, and we're gonna thrive. And they did it. They created what is known as the Black Wall Street. So when the town of Tulsa, Oklahoma successfully ran, you know, businesses, they had like lawyers and things like that, and they made bank, they made money, and they were thriving. There was families. It was all amazing. So even though Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street was a thing, white people, even though they were supposed to be, I'm like, y'all said y'all want to be separate, but they were supposed to be separate, but they said, you know what, we don't like this. We don't like that y'all have money. We don't like that y'all are doing successful. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to be violent, and we are going to kill all y'all. So, and they massacred a bunch of people. It was brutal. It was just terrible, traumatic, all things like that, and basically essentially burn Black Wall Street to the ground. So I bring this up because it is important to think about what is at stake when you are choosing not to assimilate. What can happen? Now obviously this is something that happened a long time ago, but honestly I believe that a lot of these things, you know, continue to happen today. They just happen in different ways. But yeah, and lastly I want to talk about the Black Panther Party. My shirt says free food program. So it was originally called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and it was a revolutionary political organization founded by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton in October 1966 in Oakland, California. Small thing I will say, a lot of black women were actually behind the scenes in orchestrating the Black Panther Party and bringing it to life as well, and that's something that's not often talked about, so just wanted to speak on that. And actually, in all actuality, like, the Black Panther Party was, you know, an organization that was like, okay, y'all assimilate, y'all do that, we're gonna be over here, we're going to, you know, create our own systems, we are going to, you know, have our own free food program. Now, a reason why a lot of times the Black Panther Party is seen as like a negative, something you don't really learn about in history, is because they really believed that, and I feel like for good reason, that, you know, they needed to defend themselves. So a lot of times they were armed, and they kind of followed the Malcolm X, you know, idea of by any means necessary, which means if y'all come to us violent, we're gonna come back to you violent. And not everyone agreed with this, but I think with that in mind versus, you know, like a Martin Luther King who believed in like peace and justice and nonviolence, you know, a lot of people, especially in history books, like to align with that and like kind of disassociate from like any other more radical movement. So that's also another thing. I probably will for sure do a video about the Black Panther Party. But yeah, so that was it. And then of course a lot of the leaders, unfortunately, in the Black Panther Party were followed by the FBI, tapped, wired, and killed by, like, you know, racist white folks. And this is not an opinion, this is not my opinion, this is all stuff you can look up, this is real, you know. So another example of, you know, when black people or black organizations do try to, you know, have something for themselves where they are not having to assimilate, what that looks like. And unfortunately, you know, now the Black Panther Party is kind of dissolved. But yeah, so that is kind of just covers some of the historical the times in history, you know, that started this conversation of like, what do we do about two groups in America, and how do we, or what do we just do about the fact that, you know, racist people now live here along with, you know, people of color. So now we're going to get into today and what that means for you. Yes. So essentially, look, everybody has their creed. Like, even if you're looking at like, you know, political movement or just big organizations, you know, there's going to be that person who is like, I'm going to infiltrate those white spaces. I'm going to assimilate for as much as I can, and then when I get on, I'm going to put my people on. Or there's people that are like, I'm never going to assimilate because it's not worth, X, Y, and Z, and I'm just never going to do it, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make it so that, I'm never compromising my morals, my beliefs, my whatever my gut is telling me. And we need all of those. We need everybody, if we're really going to try to uplift our communities, we need every, whatever. But whatever your goal is, I will kind of go into tips to consider. If your goal is to assimilate, there are 3 questions I need you to ask yourself when you are in this process. Question number 1, what is the reason?
What was the reason?
I had a reason.
What was the reason? What was the reason?
I just explained the reason.
What was the reason?
What is your reason for assimilating? Is it money? Is it power? Is it whatever? Because I feel like a lot of times, like, it has to be one of those. Like, now maybe you have some self-hatred, and you genuinely want, and look, I've gone through it. I grew up perming my hair, grew up thinking dark skin was, so I definitely think that everyone is on their own journey, but I just feel like you really should identify what the reason for you assimilating is. Like, for people who, like, maybe they'll say, look, I need to shuck and jive for a little bit, but once I get up there, it's over for all y'all. If that's your goal, I even stress more really getting what your reason is, because that will help keep you steadfast in making sure that you kind of stick to that. One of the biggest challenges about assimilating, I mean, obviously, it's you might be compromising, what's natural to you in terms of like your ethnicity and what your practices are, but also that, it can brainwash you. If you're perming your hair every day, I grew up perming my hair. So, automatically you may start to naturally think, well, this just looks better. Everyone around me is telling me to perm my hair. Everyone, when I go to school, everyone else's hair is straight. Maybe this is, what looks good, or, whatever. So I just think having a reason will keep you steadfast and like, I'm only doing this for the money, or I'm only doing this because I need to get that certain level, and then once I get to that level, I'm gonna have a plan of X, da, 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 da. So what's the reason? Making sure you identify a reason and keep to that reason. Question number 2, who is benefiting from you assimilating? Is it you, or is it the person around you who now feels more comfortable? Oh, I said it, and I'm gonna say it again. Is it you who's benefiting from this assimilation, or is it the people around you that now feel more comfortable with your presence? Identify that. And that's really all I'm gonna say. But I just feel like if you are not benefiting from it, I don't know, but look, everyone, that's when, like, everyone has different stakes, but just answer that question. Like, who is benefiting from this? And the last question, when you do finally get a seat at that table, look around. Ask yourself, who is not here? Who is not represented? What is the main, like, who else is at this table? Like, if you do assimilate, I just feel like, there's a way to do it where you can just be like, okay, I shucked and jived for a couple months, and I don't want anyone else to have to do that. So now that I'm in this position, I'm going to make sure that I can create this new opportunity for, people who look like me, or just people who do not look like everyone else at this table. And really think about a suggestion of mine would be really thinking about ways to bring those people in. Always make sure you're keeping that in mind. If, assimilation is something that you feel like you have to do, or something you want to do, or something you feel like you need to do, to get somewhere else. So just always keep those things in mind, those 3 questions. Now, if you're like me and your goal is to not assimilate, your goal is to be like, I'm who I am, I'm staying true to my morals, I'm staying true to my beliefs, I'm staying true, to whatever that looks like for you, then I have 3 other tips. So 1 would just be protect yourself. Safety, in terms of your mental, emotional, and spiritual health, protect yourself and be safe. Obviously, y'all were all here when I went into the video a little bit earlier, but there are stakes when you are choosing not to assimilate, when you are choosing to not put your hair up in that certain way, and that might mean, you don't have a job, or X, Y, and Z. So I just say, make sure you are being safe, make sure you are getting the help that you need. So there are two, like, it's kind of like a counseling unit, and it's cheaper than like actual counseling, because like, you know, people just be like, go to therapy, but I'm like, that stuff costs money. So there is something called betterhelp.com. That's a counseling network. I just know they were talking about it on The Real, and they are not sponsoring this video, so I'm just really letting y'all know. And it is a cheaper alternative than to like going and seeing a therapist consistently. So that is something. And then there's also something called Talkspace. So those are two things I would just say, you know, really making sure you're taking care of your mental health, and I mean physical too, like making sure, you know, always looking out. But yeah. So tip number 2 is just to have a supportive network, you know, have a network of like-minded people who are also going to be like, yeah, no, you know, have your family, you know, friends if you have some, but just really making sure you cultivate a supportive network when you can turn to and be like, this is hard, because, you know, choosing not to fit into the dominant narrative is hard. It's always going to be hard. And tip number 3, which is like, I think really one of the most important, keep fighting the good fight. Do not be swayed. I feel like there are just, I don't know, I feel like I hear a lot about like, you know, once you get older, you know, y'all are so young now, but once you get older, you'll realize that like, you know, all those, you know, movements are, you know, wasted. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that happen when you get older. And I mean, look, I know energy goes down. Sometimes it's like, I'm tired, but I just say always at least just keep fighting the good fight and make sure that you are just not compromising your beliefs. That's the real thing, because who you are internally and what your core is and what you want out of life, that I don't think really changes. I mean, that might, like, what you want to do might change, but like who you are just, I don't think will change too much. But that's for the most part what I have to say. Please comment below. Is your goal assimilation? Is it not? Is it somewhere in the middle? What do you think about all this? And do you feel like today people are more likely to just assimilate and just crave a seat at the table? Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week for my next video. Please be safe. Wash your hands. I was watching Dr. Oz and he was saying to wash your hands in the surgical way, because your fingertips are actually like what's really dirty. So like wash y'all's hands like this. I don't know if y'all can see, like this basically, and like go like this, and your thumbs too. Very important key tip. All y'all stay safe. Please stay safe in this coronavirus, and see y'all next week.